Welcome to Benny Stories, the home of timeless folk tales and powerful stories that inspire, teach, and entertain. If you love stories filled with wisdom, culture, and life lessons, then you're in the right place. Before we begin today's story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up so you never miss out on the magic of storytelling. Now, sit back, relax, and let's journey together into the world of today's folktale. The city was drowning in rain. Thunder rolled like angry drums across the night sky, lightning slicing through the darkness as torrents of water poured onto the streets. People scattered for safety, clutching their umbrellas and belongings. Vendors abandoned their stalls, rushing to cover their goods with plastic sheets. Cars honked endlessly as traffic snarled under the storm. But in the middle of this frenzy stood a boy no one noticed at first. Ethan, just 14, knelt on the flooded sidewalk. His thin shirt clung to his shivering body, torn at the sleeves, his jeans soaked up to the knees. In his arms were two babies, wrapped in ragged blankets that were already drenched. The infants whimpered in misery, their cries blending with the storm. Ethan pulled a flattened cardboard box from the ground and held it over their heads. His lips trembled, but his voice was steady as he whispered, "Don't cry. I've got you. I won't let anything happen to you." Passers-by glanced but kept moving. No one cared. Some shook their heads, muttering about street beggars. Others simply walked faster. But Ethan didn't flinch. The babies weren't just children he had found. They were his siblings, the only family he had left after tragedy stole their mother. A car splashed muddy water over his legs as it sped past. He didn't move. The storm could tear through the city, but he would not abandon the two little souls in his arms. In that moment, while the world rushed past, Ethan became more than a boy. He became a shield. The storm wasn't the only cruelty that night. From across the street, a group of teenagers huddled under a restaurant canopy noticed him. They began to whisper, then laugh. "Look at that kid," one sneered, "holding babies like some kind of hero, probably begging for pity." Another chimed in, "Bet the babies aren't even his. Street trick. People use kid to get sympathy money." Their laughter carried across the rain, sharp as knives. Ethan ignored them at first. He rocked the babies, murmuring the lullaby his mother once sang. But the boys weren't done. One picked up an empty soda can and tossed it toward him. It clattered in the water at his feet. "Hey, Superman!" Another jeered. "How much do you charge to protect babies in a storm?" Ethan's jaw tightened. He lifted his head, eyes blazing. "They're my family," he said quietly, but firmly. His voice cracked with cold, yet it carried pride the storm couldn't wash away. The teens laughed harder. One girl with them wrinkled her nose. "Pathetic. Let's get out of here before he asks us for money." They disappeared into the night, but the sting of their cruelty lingered. Ethan bent his head low, pressing the babies closer. "Let them laugh," he whispered. "They'll never understand, but I'll protect you, even if the whole world laughs." And so he sat, small against the storm, carrying a dignity that made him taller than those who mocked him. Across the street, a convoy of sleek black cars slowed to a halt. The storm had snarled traffic, and the vehicles waited as water rose on the asphalt. Inside the lead car sat a man who owned half the city's skyline. Alexander Carter, billionaire, real estate magnate. A man whose name appeared on skyscrapers, oil contracts, and political headlines. From behind tinted glass, Alexander spotted a boy. He watched as Ethan adjusted the cardboard roof over the babies' heads, his small arms wrapped like iron bars around them. Alexander's chest tightened unexpectedly. He had seen children begging before. But something about this boy, it was different. There was no greed in his eyes. Only fire. Only love. "Sir, let's move forward," his driver urged. "Traffic will clear soon." But Alexander raised a hand. His eyes never left the boy. "Stop the car," he ordered. The convoy screeched to a halt. His bodyguard frowned. "Sir, this isn't safe. It's pouring. Let's not." "Open the door," Alexander said sharply. And in the pouring rain, the billionaire stepped out, ignoring the gasps of those who recognized him. Ethan flinched when the tall figure approached. The man's expensive suit was already darkened by rain, but he didn't seem to care. In his hand, he held a thick bundle of cash. "Take this," Alexander said, his voice calm but commanding. "Get the babies somewhere safe. Buy food, clothes." The crowd that had gathered murmured in excitement. "That boy is lucky. That's Alexander Carter," someone whispered, "is giving him thousands." But Ethan shook his head. His wet hair stuck to his forehead, his lips trembling as he whispered, "No, sir." Alexander's brows furrowed. "No, I don't need money," Ethan said, hugging the babies tighter. "I need shelter for them. Money won't stop the rain." The onlookers gasped. Who refused a billionaire? Alexander stood frozen, staring at the boy's eyes, sharp, unyielding, despite his small, shivering body. For the first time in years, Alexander felt disarmed. This wasn't a beggar. This was a protector. Ethan shifted as one of the babies whimpered louder. As he adjusted the cloth around her, something slipped from his neck, a rusted silver locket, dangling on a frayed cord. Alexander's eyes widened. "Where did you get that?" he asked quickly. Ethan frowned. "It was my mother's. She gave it to me before He trailed off, his voice breaking. Alexander reached out with trembling hands, asking, "May I?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Alexander opened the locket. Inside was a faded photograph, a smiling young woman with kind eyes. Alexander's breath caught in his throat. He knew that face. He had loved that face once, long ago, before wealth and ambition pulled him away. The rain blurred his vision, but nothing could blur the truth. He looked from the locket to the boy, to the babies, and his heart whispered the words his lips could not yet say. This boy might be mine. Alexander's hand trembled as he stared at the photograph in the locket. The woman's smile pierced through decades of memory. Isabella. She was the love of his youth, the girl who believed in him before the world called him billionaire. Back then, he was just a dreamer with nothing but ambition. They had whispered promises in the dark, dreamed of forever, but forever had been stolen. His wealthy father had forbidden the match. Alexander, weak in spirit but hungry for success, walked away from her to secure his place in the Carter legacy. And now, her face stared back at him from around the neck of a boy kneeling in the rain. Alexander's throat tightened. "Where is your mother?" Ethan lowered his eyes. "She's gone. She died last year." His voice cracked. "She was all we had. Now it's just me and them." He nodded toward the babies in his arms. The words hit Alexander like thunder. Isabella, gone. A love buried in silence. Her life extinguished while he built empires. "Sir," his bodyguard interrupted, shifting nervously as the rain poured. "We need to leave. The press could." Alexander snapped, "Not another word." His gaze never left Ethan. The storm outside felt nothing compared to the storm within. Had fate really brought him here, to the son he abandoned before he even knew him? And worse, what if it was too late? The car engine idled as a billionaire crouched before the boy. The babies whimpered softly, their faces red from the cold. Alexander pulled off his coat and wrapped it around Ethan and the infants, his suit drenched. "You can't stay here," he said firmly. "You'll come with me." Ethan shook his head. "People don't just take us. I have to protect them. I can't trust strangers." His words pierced Alexander's heart. Even in his suspicion, the boy spoke like a father, not a child. "I'm not a stranger," Alexander whispered. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Yes, you are." Alexander's chest constricted. He wanted to shout, "I'm your father." But the word stuck. How could he drop such a truth in the middle of a storm? The boy would never believe him. Instead, Alexander reached for the practical. "At least let the baby see a doctor. They're shivering. Do it for them, not for me." Ethan hesitated, then gave the faintest nod. Alexander gestured to his men. "Take them into the car. Gently." As the boy climbed in with the infants, Alexander followed, his heart thundering louder than the rain. He was sitting inches from the child who carried his blood, but between them stood decades of silence, guilt, and secrets. Hours later, in a quiet private clinic, Ethan sat anxiously as doctors examined the twins. Alexander paced the hallway, every tick of the clock echoing in his skull. Finally, A nurse smiled. "They are malnourished, but strong. With proper care, they'll be fine." Relief washed over Ethan. He whispered, "Thank you," and kissed the baby's foreheads. Alexander lingered at the door, watching. The boy's tenderness mirrored Isabella's. It was like seeing her reborn in him. But doubt gnawed at Alexander. He needed certainty. He called his assistant aside. "Take samples. Quietly. DNA testing. I want results immediately." The assistant hesitated. "Sir, do you?" Alexander cut him off. "Do it." That night, as Ethan fed his siblings with trembling hands, Alexander stared out of the clinic window into the storm. His empire had given him control over everything, except this moment. If the test confirmed his suspicion, it would shatter the world he had built. And if it didn't, why did his heart already know the answer? 2 days later, Alexander's convoy rolled into the gated drive of his mansion, marble pillars, chandeliers glowing through massive windows, servants bowing as the doors opened. Ethan stepped out awkwardly, barefoot, holding the babies. His eyes widened at the sheer size of the estate. "This is where you live," he whispered. Alexander nodded. "It's your home now, too." But his words triggered a storm fiercer than the rain. From the grand staircase descended Catherine Carter, Alexander's wife. Elegant, cold, every inch a queen of the empire. Behind her were their 2 teenage children, Emma and Lucas, their expressions sharp with suspicion. "What is this?" Catherine demanded. Her eyes narrowed on Ethan. "Why is a street boy carrying children into my house?" Alexander's jaw tightened. "Catherine, not now." Emma crossed her arms. "Dad, are you serious? You just picked him off the street." Ethan shifted uneasily, clutching the twins closer. He could feel the daggers in their eyes. Alexander tried to soften his voice. "They need care. That's all you need to know for now." But Catherine wasn't fooled. Her voice rose like venom. "Don't tell me this is another one of your mistakes coming home to roost." The silence that followed was deafening. Days later, the family tension boiled into public scandal. Alexander insisted Ethan accompany him to a charity gala, believing it would silence whispers if people saw his act of compassion. Dressed in a borrowed suit too large for his frame, Ethan entered the glittering ballroom at Alexander's side. The chandeliers sparkled, violins played, and the city's elite turned to stare. But instead of admiration, mockery followed. "Who is that boy?" whispered a banker. "Looks like a beggar they polished and brought in," laughed another. At one point, a wealthy investor deliberately bumped into Ethan, spilling champagne onto his borrowed jacket. "Careful, street rat," he sneered. The laughter spread like wildfire. Ethan's face burned with humiliation. He wanted to sink into the floor. Alexander's fists clenched. He longed to silence them, to roar his truth. "Here's my son." But fear of scandal chained his tongue. Ethan's chest heaved. He glanced at Alexander, silently begging him to speak, to defend him, to claim him. But Alexander said nothing. With tears burning in his eyes, Ethan turned and fled the ballroom, the sound of laughter chasing him out into the night. And for the first time in years, Alexander Carter, billionaire, titan, master of the city, felt utterly powerless. Alexander returned to his study long after the gala ended. His fists were clenched, jaw tight, as he replayed the humiliation Ethan endured. The image of the boy fleeing in tears haunted him. For decades he had buried guilt under layers of wealth and polished smiles, but tonight it came roaring back. Pacing the room, he pulled open drawers in his oak desk, searching for something he hadn't touched in years. Dust rose as he uncovered an old wooden box. Inside lay faded photographs, university notebooks, and at the bottom a folded, yellowed envelope. His heart froze. Isabella's handwriting. Hands trembling, Alexander opened it. The ink was faded, but the words burned like fire. "Alex, if life tears us apart and you never see me again, promise me one thing. If you ever find our child, protect him. Love him like you once loved me. He will be your second chance." Alexander collapsed into his chair. The weight of her voice from the grave crushed him. She had believed in him even after he abandoned her. And now, fate had delivered their son to his doorstep, and he had failed him at the gala. Tears streamed silently down his face as he whispered, I failed you, Isabella, but I swear I will not fail him again. But Alexander's vow was about to be tested. News of the mysterious boy living in the Carter mansion had spread like wildfire across tabloids and social media. Whispers of the Billionaire'S secret heir lit up gossip columns, and not everyone welcomed the boy's existence. One rainy night, as Ethan returned from tutoring sessions Alexander had arranged, a black van screeched to a halt beside him. Masked men leapt out, grabbing him and the twins he carried. "Let me go!" Ethan shouted, struggling fiercely. "Don't touch them!" But a fist slammed into his gut, stealing his breath. One of the men snarled, "Shut up, street rat. Your billionaire daddy will pay for you." The van roared away into the night. Hours later, Alexander received a call. A distorted voice said, "We have the boy and the babies. Sign over the Westbridge oil contract, or you'll never see them again." Alexander's blood turned to ice. The Westbridge deal was worth billions, the cornerstone of his empire. But this wasn't about business anymore. It was about blood, about redemption. "Touch them," Alexander growled, his voice shaking with rage, "and I will burn the world to find you." Against the advice of his security team, Alexander refused to let the police handle it alone. He insisted on being part of the rescue operation. For once, the billionaire was not a man of wealth, but a father driven by desperation. Tracking signals led them to an abandoned warehouse on the city's outskirts. Shadows stretched across damp concrete as Alexander's convoy rolled in silently. Inside, Ethan clutched the babies tightly, whispering, "Stay strong. I'll keep you safe." Bruised but unbroken, he glared at his captors with defiance that reminded Alexander of Isabella's fire. When the gunfire erupted, chaos filled the warehouse. Security stormed in, disarming kidnappers. Amid the shouting and bullets, Alexander himself charged forward. He ripped open the door of the small room where Ethan was held. "Dad!" Ethan whispered in disbelief. For the first time, Alexander didn't hesitate. He pulled the boy and the twins into his arms. "I'm here. I'll never let you go again." The kidnappers were subdued, the children safe, but the world had already taken notice. Paparazzi cameras caught every image of Alexander Carter, billionaire titan, cradling a boy in tears and calling him son. The secret was out. By morning, every news channel blazed with headlines. Alexander Carter's secret heir revealed in hostage drama. Billionaire rescues hidden family from kidnappers. Social media exploded. Some praised him. Finally, a billionaire with a heart. Others condemned him. So he abandoned a woman and child, then plays hero now. Hashtags trended worldwide. #Stormboy, #Cartier, #Lawson. Inside the mansion, tension boiled. Catherine, Alexander's wife, hurled a crystal glass against the wall. "You've ruined us. Do you realize what this means for Emma, for Lucas? You've destroyed our family name." Alexander stood firm. "The only thing I destroyed was years of silence. Ethan is my son, and I will protect him." Emma's eyes filled with betrayal. "So we're nothing to you now?" Alexander shook his head, pain in his voice. "You'll always be my children, but I will not repeat the mistake I made with Isabella." Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his room, scrolling through articles on an old tablet. He saw people mocking him, doubting him, dissecting him like a scandal. His fists clenched. He whispered to the twins, "We don't belong here. They'll never accept us." Yet deep down, he also knew, for the first time in his life, the world was finally seeing him. The scandal grew darker. Business rivals saw an opportunity to strike. Anonymous blogs spread rumors that Ethan was a fraud, a hired actor posing as Alexander's son to manipulate public sympathy. One afternoon, reporters ambushed Ethan outside the mansion. Cameras flashed as they shouted, "Are you really his son? Is this all an inheritance scam? Did your mother trick the billionaire?" Ethan's heart pounded. He wanted to scream, to run. But instead, he held the babies tighter and said clearly, "My mother never lied. She raised me alone. I never asked for his money. I only ever wanted to keep my brother and sister safe. That's the truth." The footage went viral. Millions shared it. calling him the boy who wouldn't break. His honesty melted even the harshest critics. Back inside, Alexander watched the clip with tears in his eyes. "He's stronger than I ever was," he whispered. "He's everything Isabella wanted him to be." But Catherine was not moved. Her voice dripped venom as she hissed, "If you give him your name, Alex, if you put him in the will, then you've made me your enemy." The family war had begun. The storm of media frenzy continued for weeks. Every newspaper, every talk show, every gossip blog had Ethan's name in its headlines. Half the world called him a fraud. The other half called him a miracle. But inside the Carter mansion, life was unbearable. Catherine ignored him completely. Emma and Lucas sneered whenever he walked by, whispering insults under their breath. Servants, unsure which side to take, avoided eye contact with him. Ethan should have crumbled under the weight of it all. But he didn't. Every morning, he woke up early to prepare bottles for the twins. He fed them, changed their clothes, and sang softly to them while the mansion buzzed with silent judgment. In the afternoons, Alexander arranged private tutors. Ethan threw himself into his studies with relentless determination. Math, literature, even business. He devoured it all like a starving boy clutching at his only chance. One evening, Alexander entered the study and found Ethan scribbling equations. "You don't have to push yourself this hard," he said gently. Ethan didn't look up. "If I want them to respect me, I have to be more than just a boy from the storm. I have to prove I belong here." Alexander's chest tightened with pride. "You already belong here," he whispered. But Ethan shook his head. "Not yet." And so, while the world tried to break him, the boy grew stronger. It wasn't long before darker forces seized the moment. An anonymous blog called The Truth about Ethan began releasing damaging evidence. A forged birth certificate claimed Isabella had other lovers. Grainy photos were edited to make it look like Ethan was part of a gang. Commentators swore he was no heir, just a clever imposter. The lies spread like wildfire. Sponsors pulled out of Alexander's charity events. Shareholders questioned his judgment. "This boy is destroying your empire," one board member warned. But Alexander refused to abandon Ethan. "My empire means nothing if I lose him." Meanwhile, Ethan faced a fire himself. One evening, reporters cornered him outside a library. "Are you lying about your father?" one shouted. "Did your mother trick him for money?" another pressed. Ethan's fists clenched. His throat burned. He thought about running. But then he remembered his mother's words, "Always tell the truth, even if the world doesn't listen." He lifted his chin and said clearly, "I am not here for money. I am not here for fame. I am here because I promised my mother I would protect my brother and sister. That's all I've ever wanted." The clip went viral. Millions admired his calm honesty. The world saw not a scammer, but a boy holding on to truth in a sea of lies. And slowly, public opinion began to shift. The pressure became unbearable for Alexander. Business partners withdrew. Politicians distanced themselves. Catherine threatened divorce. For years, Alexander controlled every narrative, every headline. But this storm could not be bought, silenced, or spun. Finally, one evening, he sat before a live television audience. Cameras zoomed in as a billionaire, usually stoic, untouchable, took a deep breath. "I have a confession," he began, his voice trembling. "Decades ago, I loved a woman named Isabella. She gave me her heart when I had nothing. But I chose ambition over love. She bore my son, Ethan, and I abandoned them both." Gasps filled the studio. Tears streamed down his face. "I was a coward, and Isabella is gone now. But Ethan lives, and he is my son. I don't care what it costs me, my name, my wealth, my legacy. I will never turn my back on him again." The world froze. Billionaires never cried. Billionaires never admitted fault. But Alexander Carter had bared his soul to millions. And overnight, the narrative shifted. Headlines no longer called Ethan the storm boy or the alleged heir. They called him what he was, the son the billionaire couldn't deny. With Alexander's confession, Ethan's life transformed. Invitations poured in from schools, charities, and international conferences. NGOs asked him to speak about child poverty, about resilience, about the storm that had defined his life. At first, He was hesitant. "I'm not a speaker," he told Alexander. "I'm just me." But Alexander smiled. "That's exactly why they need to hear you, because you're real." At his first event, Ethan stood nervously at the podium, the twins watching from the front row. The room was filled with cameras and dignitaries. He took a shaky breath, then spoke. "When the storm came that night, I wasn't thinking about myself. I was thinking about them," he said, pointing to the twins. "If a boy like me can protect babies in the rain, then leaders, powerful people, can protect children in this country. We don't need excuses. We need action." The hall erupted in applause. The speech went viral globally. People called him the boy who challenged leaders. Donations for children's shelters skyrocketed. Ethan's story was no longer just about survival. It had become a movement. Years later, the Carter Empire looked different. Alexander had stepped back from daily operations, handing more responsibility to Ethan. The boy who once shielded infants under a cardboard sheet now wore tailored suits, commanding boardrooms with quiet confidence. The twins, now teenagers, flourished under his care. They were no longer children of pity, but children of promise. On the anniversary of Isabella's death, the family gathered at a foundation Ethan had built in her honor, a shelter for abandoned mothers and children. Reporters flocked as Ethan delivered his most powerful words yet. "I will never forget the night of the storm. That night, I had nothing but love and determination, and it was enough to carry us through. Today, I have more than I ever dreamed of. But my promise remains the same, to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Alexander, now older and frailer, watched with tears in his eyes. He whispered to himself, "You did it, Isabella. He became everything you hoped for." As the sun set, Ethan stood tall, the storm boy turned heir, his siblings beside him, his father proud at his side. The boy mocked in the rain had become a man the world would never forget.